So I had a play out Thursday night one.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. This is the February 5th, 2025 meeting of the Housing and Economic Development Committee. It is 3 o'clock p.m. and I'd like to call the meeting to order. It looks like we have a number of people on screen and also in the audience. I do want to note that we do have a quorum of members present here in chambers, and we also have a member of our committee, Travis Brooks, who based on our remote attendance policy is able to participate and vote, but does not count towards quorum here in the chambers. Members of the committee, I would like to welcome Deborah Dawson as a returning member of IAED, but it's been a couple of years. So welcome back. We do now have 6 members of the committee: Legislator Dawson, Sigler, myself, Koreman, Pilar, and Brooks. So that brings us to 6 members. So we'll need 4 votes in the affirmative or 4 votes for something to carry, just so everybody understands the new committee math. Also on screen, we have Legislator Black, and here in chambers, Legislator John, who are also here joining us. Now that we got all the introductions out of the way, we do have a number of blue cards, and just to point out, anybody who maybe has just joined us, if you'd like to speak on your 3 minutes of privilege of the floor, please fill out a blue card. You can either bring that up to myself, hand it to a legislator, or to our Clerk Taylor, and we'll get you on the list. I do, because there are more than usual on our speakers list, I will just read the rules for speaking under privilege of the floor as a friendly reminder. The rules are that I agree to a 3-minute time limit. I agree not to raise my voice. I agree to not use lewd, obscene, profane, slanderous, or libelous language, or speak or act in a manner that would tend to incite a breach of the peace. I agree to not speak about county personnel matters. Personnel matters include comments about the job performance of a named county employee other than elected officials. After 3 minutes, I agree to leave the microphone and yield the floor. Transferring time to another person is not permitted. I agree to be courteous and not make comments, gestures, outbursts, or disruptions while other members of the public or legislators are speaking. I agree that if I cause a disruption and am asked to leave, I will leave the chambers. I don't foresee that being an issue with this group, but just for the good of the order, figured we'd read those out loud. The first person we have under privilege of the public comment is Jill Tripp. First up on deck. Next we'll have Catherine Cernera. Doesn't matter, whichever you prefer.
I can see everyone better from here.
Sure.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'll try to follow the rules. Quell any impulses toward bad behavior. I'm a 40-year resident of Ithaca's North Side and a longtime school-related person, in that I am a retired school psychologist as well as a current member of the Ithaca City School District Board of Education. And I came today to urge your support for the resolution on your committee's agenda to move forward the request to increase the size of the Tompkins County Industrial Development Agency so that it would now include a member of the school community. The reasons for this, I think, are obvious, but briefly stated, it is that the school district raises most of its funds from property taxes, and as a result is very impacted by tax exemptions, which is, of course, a large part, if not all, of what the TCIDA does. So I think to have a person on the board who's familiar with the impacts of your decisions on the Ithaca City School District, as well as other school districts in the county, would be very helpful and I think informative for you. And I thank you in advance for your support of this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Catherine Cernera.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Catherine Cernera. I am the president of the Ithaca Teachers Association, and I'm here today representing the interest of the close to 600 public school teachers who teach in the Ithaca City School District, as well as the interest of the students who we serve. And I know that you've heard from a number of us via email, but I'm really just going to read that statement for all of you. So as a teacher in the Ithaca City School District, a resident of the Ithaca City School District in the town of Danby, and a taxpayer and voter in Tompkins County, I am here today to strongly encourage you to seat a school district representative on the Tompkins County Industrial Development Agency Board. The recent consideration of the Southworks Industrial Project, the decision to approve the project despite strong concerns about the impact of this project on the Ithaca City School District, and the defense of this decision that took place at the December 12th Ithaca City School District Board of Education Facilities Committee meeting all prove that continuing to approve school tax abatements for industrial development projects without input from our local schools is a tremendous mistake. As residents of Tompkins County, we regularly hear about our elected officials' commitment to high-quality public schools. We all know that excellent schools don't come cheap, and while taxpayers have regularly stepped up to pay their fair share, we need a commitment that legislative policies will not undermine their efforts to fund the schools our students deserve. That is why we need to seat a school district representative on this board. Thank you.
Thank you. And no stranger to the legislature, we have Amanda Kirschgeshner. Twice in one day. Nice to see you again.
Speak in the first meeting. I mean, that was interesting though. Thanks for having public comment for this. I came to talk about 5A, which is superfluous. Two of you I used to go to the IDA meetings with and talk about getting a labor rep. We did that. We didn't need to grow the board to do it. We don't need multiple business people on the IDA. One would be more than sufficient. We could keep it at 7. It would totally save us the time of having to kick this one up to New York State only to have them poo-poo it or whatever, because that's probably what they'll do. Just add a school board rep to the IDA, folks. It's not complicated. You can do it. It's suggested in 18A. You can find it on the IDA website and read it. If you haven't, please consider just making the addition without having to create additional legislation. Stop buying time. Get it done. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Next, we have Robert Lynch. And Bob, I don't know, are you here personally or professionally as the Town of Enfield representative?
Good afternoon. I'm here representing the Enfield Town Board, Robert Lynch. Back on the 8th of January, our town board passed a resolution, which I believe you each have received a copy of, that endorsed the expansion of the Tompkins County Industrial Development Agency from 7 members to 9 members. And I'm here today to reiterate that requested expansion. Now, our resolution, which was kind of built off of what school board member Jill Tripp said, was to expand it with a specific representative to be added, and that would be representing the rural towns. Well, we put that issue before the Tompkins County Council of Governments back on the 23rd of January, and some interesting questions came up. One of them was from Pierre St. Perez, who represents the city of Ithaca on TCOG, and he said, well, the city has traditionally been given an at-large appointment, so would our position be jeopardized if a new member was designated to represent the rural towns? And so I like the new language that the resolution that's on your table today talks about, which would include a rural representative, a school representative, a city representative, all as potential at-large members. And so we'd basically be putting in our applications, we'd be considered by the legislature, and may the best people be appointed to those additional positions. But I think it's important that we expand the IDA membership so that we allow this increased diversity. And that's what it's all about. is inclusion and diversity, because we're including all points of view. For example, our town of Enfield, we have solar farms that have sought and obtained IDA tax abatements, and that's been a concern for some. So if we have the input that's maximum from as many different voices as possible, I think that will help. So I would recommend that you recommend this resolution to the full legislature, and that the full legislature pass it on to the state legislature, and that we get an additional 2 members on the IDA, and then we'll kind of figure it out afterwards as to which people from which jurisdictions will be represented. And I think that states my case. Any questions?
Any questions for Bob as it relates to the resolution that was provided by the Enfield Town Board? Appreciate it, Bob. That
Thank you.
phone call was not your timer. It was just, thanks. Okay, any other blue cards? Anybody online, Taylor, that we've had requests from? Okay. I'll appreciate members of the community coming out and sharing their thoughts with us. I have no changes to the agenda. Looking to my colleagues to see if there's any suggestions or changes, but seeing none. I would ask for a motion to approve the minutes of our January 9th meeting, 2025. Moved by Veronica, seconded by Annie. Because we are online and in person, we are going to have to take a roll call vote. So if there's no discussion, Travis, we're going to go ahead and always start with you. So Travis Brooks?
Yes.
Deborah Dawson?
Yes.
Mike Sigler?
Yes.
Ann Koreman?
Yes.
Veronica Pillar?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Those pass unanimously. Under Chair's report, we do have this resolution that many of you are here for today. Just put it there because it wanted to make sure it was towards the top of the list so that if other folks could get about their day.
Can I just ask one question, point of clarification on the agenda?
Yeah.
So Deborah was added to the committee, so we have 6 members now?
That's correct.
Okay, and it just so folks know, if they're looking at the agenda, her name didn't get put on here yet, but
Apparently,
Right.
there's some issue with the program that does these cover sheets, and they can't add a 6th name.
Yep, and we'll manually fix it following the meeting.
Sorry?
We'll manually fix it following the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I was hoping to go incognito for the rest of the year, Taylor.
Unfortunately, we're committed to transparency, Deborah, so your name's going to make the agenda. I'm going to go ahead and move this resolution of the Tompkins County Legislature encouraging the passage of a home rule law to expand membership of the Tompkins County Industrial Development Agency, TCIDA, ID number 13085. If I could have a seconder. Seconded by Veronica Pillar.
All of us.
It looked, there also were multiple ones eager to second. I first want to thank Legislator Black for bringing an iteration of this resolution forward. Gave us a great place to start, and also used what Shauna had brought forward to help really as a starting point in this conversation. So Shauna, I appreciate you engaging with the committee and making sure that the perceived underrepresented voices are heard in this conversation. So thank you for doing that. I'm going to open it up to my colleagues first for comments on the resolution. Mike, and then Veronica.
So when I started out, I was actually inclined to vote for this. I don't really have a big problem with it going from 7 to 9. My concern actually stems from the emails we've gotten from people that are members of the teachers union, because they've made it very clear from their emails that their sole intent is to vote no. And I find that rather concerning, frankly. That is not what I think this agency is set up to do. I mean, if you're going in with the mindset of we're going to be a no vote on projects that get tax abatements, that basically defeats the purpose of the actual organization you want to join. Listen, I've been on the IDA. I voted against projects because there was a project with Ithaca beer. I like Ithaca beer. They're a brand that Ithaca is known for, and yet I voted against a tax abatement for them. I voted against a project on State Street, housing. Beautiful project now. Gosh, it's right next to State Street Diner. It's gorgeous, gorgeous apartments, fully rented. But I didn't understand why they were getting a tax abatement. What I'm being told here is, no, we don't like this one project that's coming through. It's going to be a negative for the school district, and we now want to get on because we want to vote no against that. I find that to be a troublesome barrier, and I don't really know how to get over that. Hopefully somebody here will suggest how to get me over that, but if not, that's fine too. As Amanda said wisely, I think there are 7 members. I've never agreed that there should be 4 members that are county legislators. I've never been sure why we do that. We certainly have room if someone from the school board or from the school district wants to run. And beyond this, all they have to do is apply. I mean, these seats are open seats. There's no reason why someone can't come and do that. We just appointed people to it. And as far as I knew, those were the only people that were seeking those seats. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on it. I look forward to hearing from other people.
Thanks for your comments, Mike. Next I have Veronica and then Shauna.
It is a privilege to sit on this side of this table, so I get to see the president of one of the teachers' unions shaking her head pretty vigorously at your interpretation of their emails, just for the record that can't say. I'm very in support of this resolution. My only concern about it is actually that it merely says additional consideration should be given to ensuring local labor and school districts are represented on the TCIDA. And I wish that the language were stronger because I think that we get to make that decision, although someone who was here when the labor seat was added could correct me. It is not my understanding that people from like the school district, school community just want to vote no on projects. And this construed broadly, I suppose, I could say we, because I am also a school teacher in my other life. But in general, I don't think people seek offices on voting groups to vote no on anything. They just want to have their voice heard and be represented and have a seat at the table. And we've seen, just last night, I think, we saw, not in exactly this way, but an example of a proposal that a lot of people who were not at the decision-making table initially opposed, and then when the table was opened up and collaborative discussion was had, the proposal changed. I don't think anyone thought it got worse. I think a lot of people thought it got better, and a lot more people supported it than did originally, and everyone is better off for it. And I'm talking about the policy of some probation officers carrying guns. One could have said beforehand, oh, the community just wants to say no, 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 and that is not on the whole what happened. I also question if you think that voting no is a disqualifier from being on the IDA. And I know, Mike, that's not what you said, but if anyone does, are you saying that what makes a good IDA member is just voting yes? I hope no one thinks that, because otherwise, why do we have an IDA at all? We could just have a big old stamp. And finally, I don't know, one of our public commenters alluded to this, but the state law that provides for the creation of industrial development agencies says that school districts should be represented on the board. And so one could see adding a school district seat. And I don't even have a huge opinion about the 7 to 9 thing. Like, if going to 9 makes this easier and facilitates it, that's fine. That doesn't seem like an unwieldy number. We have 14 of us, or well, not at the moment, but will around this table. But yeah, you could see adding a school district seat as just bringing us in line for once with one of the provisions of the state's stated purpose for IDAs in the first place. So let's do it.
Thank you, Veronica. Shauna?
Thanks, Greg, and thanks for letting me join your committee today. I also want to thank School Board Member Erin Croyle. I have been working with her for quite a while. This isn't a conversation that just started a few weeks ago. We've been talking about it for a few years, and from listening to the emails, from having conversations, had conversations with Catherine as well. You know, obviously, a big project like Southworks would absolutely have an impact on the school district. South Hill is already busting at the seams. We know that traffic patterns on Route 96, whenever school is starting or ending, would really see some negative impacts from the cars that are coming in and out. I mean, there are a lot of things that we have to consider whenever we increase our population and our housing in that area. The one reason why I actually wanted to bring this resolution to this board was the fact that whenever we had the conversation about just adding another person to the 7, there was a lot of resistance against that. And my assumption is because they think people, you know, currently in our legislature believe that they would not have the yes votes to pass projects. And at least with 9, it would be able to perhaps water down the no's. You know, I think that's unfortunate because unfortunately, you know, whenever you're forming a board, you should have balance. And, you know, there are people that are voting yes on every project on the IDA. There are people that probably primarily vote no. Like that's democracy and that's balance. And I think that's healthy. So I've never once heard that anyone that would be appointed to this board is going to vote no on every project. And I think we have to give people the benefit of the doubt whenever we're talking about this. So I absolutely think this is a great idea. I did work with Maury on the language, and one of the things that we wanted to make sure to more or less codify was to protect the role of our unions here and to provide them with representation on our IDA, and to actually kind of write that into policy more or less. So that's, Veronica, that's why I wanted to mention that in this resolution as well.
Thank you, Shauna. I've got Ann Koreman, then Rich John.
Thank you. So a couple of things that I wanted to mention. So first off, when folks today or other days have talked about school folks, representatives from the schools voting no, I have not seen any fact on that. So I would just like to, hopefully that's the last discussion on that. I'm not sure where that's coming from. My opinion, I don't often say what someone's motivation or what they're thinking, but in this case, I will. I think it's fear that it's not based in reality. It's not based on what my conversations with folks from the schools all around the county. It's not based on what I've read in the emails. So I just like to, if hopefully we can put that to bed. I don't think it's accurate at all. And I would like to see also, in addition to representatives from the school, I would like to see a representative from the rural areas. I would like to always make sure that we have somebody from labor. And so that is not necessarily covered in this resolution, but I would like to figure out to make sure that we've codified, or the county and the IDA has codified who is going to get appointed. Because if you look here on the, let's see, the second resolve that the at-large seats shall be filled with representatives from, if we just took 4 of the business type things, 4 of the seats could be finance and banking, development and construction, economic development. There was, and the IAED board. So that could be 4, and then where is there room for the labor, the schools, rural, and so that's how many, didn't see, that's 7.
Heard about 9.
And then if you have a couple, 2, 3, 4 legislators, we're way over the 9. So I would just really make sure that that's, you know, in our thinking, that we're making sure that we're following up on that and making sure it's representative, have more people at the table that we haven't had before. So I appreciate this being brought before us, and I think if we're adding also the rural areas in addition to the school, to me that helps make it more diverse. I don't think it waters it down. I think it brings more people to the table. So thank you.
Thank you. I've got Rich, John, and then it's open season after that, so go ahead.
Greg, thanks for letting me address your committee. First, I guess I have several different comments. I did visit with the School Board Finance Committee back in December, and we had a lively conversation. And I said I thought this was a good discussion to have. And I've certainly thought about it since then. I've gotten lots and lots of emails. And with that in mind, I guess I'd like to first just talk about the Southworks project generally, because this was the largest decision this IDA has ever made, and probably the largest one it will make. It was a significant investment of time and effort to get to a decision on this project. We sought more community input than on any project we've ever addressed. It went on much longer than any other project we have had before us. We did specific outreach to many different segments of our community, including the school. There were multiple attempts to get somebody from the school to come and talk to us about this project, and nobody ever showed up. Only after we voted on it was there an objection raised. And it's still not clear to me quite what the objection is. I did have an email from the chair of the Finance Committee who was talking about the housing component, and not directly saying we shouldn't be approving housing, but saying if all of that housing that is proposed for Southworks came online immediately and there was a high concentration of families with kids all going to South Hill School, that could be a significant issue. And I agree, it could be, because those kids would be going to school before the pilot had gone on long enough that real tax revenue was coming in. However, the likelihood of that happening, finally, I think we agreed at that December meeting, was really, really low. So you were looking at a hypothetical that was not really based in reality. But still there was objection to the Southworks project because of the danger of that. Since that meeting, I asked for help from the administrative director at the IDA. There were 915 housing units, I believe, in the Southworks project. In the last 5 years, the IDA has approved 11 projects, 946 units, right? We've done Southworks in our community, and we have not seen the catastrophic event that was the subject of all of the talk at this December meeting. It did not happen. And frankly, it won't happen at Southworks either. I see there's representatives from the development here today. It's going to take a long time for Southworks to get built out. It is not happening overnight. And as it goes along, each unit that is approved and developed will be on its separate pilot and will be kicking in. And in the meantime, you say, well, there still could be a gap. And that's true, but that's for the county and the city as well, and the town of Ithaca, because the town of Ithaca has some Southworks in it. How it works, though, is all the prior projects that are fully completed and the ones that are in process are paying increasing amounts of tax every year. And in fact, over the years, the IDA-approved projects are contributing over $70 million of tax money every year. That benefits all of the different taxing entities, including the school districts. And I want to emphasize that because the consistent, and I'd say almost relentless message from the email and people coming and talking to us is that the IDA somehow takes money away from the schools. The IDA has helped the schools fundamentally in gigantic ways. A lot of that $70 million goes towards school tax. It is real money that helps the schools. And if those IDA projects had not gotten built, that money wouldn't be there. And it worries me that at the same time we're getting this request that we need the ICSD voice on the IDA, we have this consistent message that is fundamentally untrue, that the IDA has taken money from schools. That has not happened. And that's not what an IDA does. You're laughing over there, but it's, I don't know how you say it. And it really concerns me because, frankly, the county needs economic development. But more than the county, the city and the Ithaca City School District, given the trends of the increases in your taxes year on year, you absolutely need growth. You have to have it if you're going to have a sustainable school or city for that matter. And the idea that you say, we're going to exempt, school taxes from abatements means they won't work, or you're going to have somebody who's really skeptical of any kind of projects and vote no on them, you're not going to have the economic development you need. You're going to have to raise money some other way if there aren't approved projects. And it worries me. And frankly, as a legislature, we're going to vote on this. We can go to 9 members, and it certainly seems like there's probably the votes for it, but we're going to have to own it. If we really hurt economic development in this county, that's on us. And I had proposed an interim program that before we go to 9 members, before we ask New York State to give us a local law and approve all of that, that we adopt a policy at the IDA to require, if it's a housing project, that the district where the school is located, specifically the superintendent is notified and invited and given a seat at the table to talk to us about any housing impacts on the schools that would result from that project specifically. And it would be whichever school district the project exists in, rather than one school district. And at the same time, I said that we should really get an update to our housing needs assessment. It's been about a decade, and frankly, I'm not sure we're in the same condition from a housing standpoint that we were then. Maybe the IDA should not be approving housing projects, but the relentless message we also have gotten at the IDA is housing, that the full spectrum of housing is necessary. I think we need to examine that question. And frankly, I think the IDA should probably take its housing committee back into session and really look at this issue there too. Now, Shauna, you suggested all that was busy work. I don't think it's busy work at all. And it would give us a very good idea of what we should be doing. And hearing specifically from school districts to say, what are you going to tell us before we just give them a seat at the table? I don't know. Because I don't know why the 7 people that have been representing the community on the IDA have not been representing the interests of schools. I think they have. But at any rate, as I said, I think the vote will go where it goes. I worry about it. I had one final question, which is, the IDA costs a lot of money to run. If we're going to give away some authority and institutionalize the school district on the IDA, should the school district be helping to fund the IDA? I haven't heard that addressed, and I put the question on the table. I'll stop talking, and I'm sure there's a lot of response to that. Thanks.
You did spark a lot of hands, Rich. But I have Deborah Dawson, Travis Brooks, Veronica Pillar, and then I am going to take a turn. So, Deborah.
Thanks, Greg. I don't see any reason, Rich, why we can't proceed on 2 fronts. You and I have discussed this. I think that while we wait for this resolution to percolate up through the state system, we can certainly institute the procedure that you have proposed, which is to bring the school district into the conversation as we move forward with something. I do want to address a point that Legislature Pillar made about the state legislation that established IDAs. It's been a long time since I've read that, but my recollection is that the legislation does not say that we must have a school district or a school representative. The legislation, much like the resolution that's before us, lists categories of stakeholders that might be included. And there are generally many more categories of stakeholders, both in the state legislation and in this resolution, than there are positions on our board. Finally, I want to comment on the role of the IDA board and what it means to be a member of that board. I think, and this was a hard adjustment for me to make because I started out years ago before I was on the legislature being one of the people that came to every meeting screaming and yelling about how the IDA shouldn't approve this and that project. Color me surprised when I found myself on the IDA board, but I understand that as a member of that board, it's my job to find a way to say yes. Not necessarily to say yes to every proposal, but to find a way to tailor the proposals and propose changes to those proposals that would allow development to go forward, because as Rich says, we need the development. So having said all that, I will certainly support the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Travis Brooks.
So to be clear, because there seems to be a lot of conversation about Ithaca City School District on this board, there's a seat for school districts on this board in the proposal, right? So it's not every year, or if this resolution was to pass, that is Ithaca City School District. That's not the case. So I want people to understand that part. I do appreciate much of Rich's comments. I'm always going to err on the side of having more people at the table, more diversity at the table, because I think that's important when we're making decisions. So I'm going to support this. I do want to explore the last part of what Rich said in terms of our school districts going to put into this, right? Like the county and others do. I think that's a fair question, but I'm going to support this. I think we always have to have a diversity of voices in the space. And I hope that one school district or another doesn't think this is their seat.
Thank you, Travis. Veronica?
I agree with Travis, and I think I mostly lost my train of thought. I don't quite know what to say about it, but a thing that stuck out to me, and one thing that you said, Rich, was the language about if we want to give up some decision-making power. And I guess I wonder if you've been IDA chair too long, even though I voted to have you do it again. If we're supposed to be representing everybody, I will say, and I don't know who's like, maybe it's a question we should, I'm doing it.
It is a county IDA, and what we're talking about is expanding it to give some other governmental entity a specific authority to help run it. That's what you're talking about.
Thank you. I'm going to take a turn, Ann, if you don't mind, unless you have
Go ahead.
Okay.
I can go next.
One, I would just like to say, Rich, I do appreciate your leadership on the IDA. I think it is a complex board and it makes complex decisions, and too frequent of turnover in certain situations can lead to not having a full breadth of understanding. So I just want to say that. Also, I want to reiterate that this is the inclusion of representatives, potential inclusion, really, is how it's written, of members representing school districts' interests. That could be a member of a teachers union, it could be administrator, it could be a superintendent, it could be a school board member, right? And it could be from any one of the school districts that's represented in Tompkins County. So I just want that to be clear. And I do strongly believe in the value of an IDA. When it comes to funding, I don't think we should go out to the school districts or the towns and ask for additional money to help run this. Economic development is a county, county issue, and I think it should live there as much as it is also a local town issue. But as it relates to this and the authority that we have, I do think that this is a county issue. I think that to many points that have been made, we need to be as inclusionary as possible. I think that there was comment about, some of these other seats could be lumped together to keep the number smaller. But I would also say too that, Legislator Koreman, when on the IDA, represented a rural district. I represent a rural district in Dryden.
Suburban.
Deborah's kind of suburban / rural, close to urban. So, there is representation.
I'm a Renaissance woman, Greg.
Yeah, and I think we can't just look at people as binary representatives, right? Because I know that there's a student at ICSD who's been in our care, in our house, and I'm very much interested in how schools are funded and resourced. I come from a family of a 45-year public school educator, so I understand those type of things. So I think when we look at individuals as just representing one thing, that's not healthy. So I think we need to look collectively, and that's why we have applications, and you list your relevant experience, and you go through a process. And that's why I think also writing this resolution in a way that's broad, that says we should have a diverse representative board, including representatives from as many of the following as possible. So you could fill one or two of those needs. And I think we also need to be looking ahead and saying, okay, do we have a lot of economic development projects in the pipeline that may not be housing, right? Maybe those, we need different needs on that IDA to help navigate that. Do we have a lot of housing coming up? Maybe we need school. Maybe we need, people from this, that, or the other thing. So I think by creating some flexibility and expanding the board, because there's obviously a desire for people to serve in this type of capacity, to be part of this decision-making body, to make sure that voices are heard in all corners of our community, we still need to get the work done. We need to have balance. And I think we also need to be strategic at, looking forward at economic development. What are the impacts going to be, and how can a board be comprised that's going to be as representative as possible? So that's why I'm not super keen on locking in these binary seats, but writing it in a way that says we need to give special consideration to school districts, which are the largest taxing jurisdiction as it relates to property taxes in our community. And we need to give special consideration to representative labor. And I would hope that, to Deborah's point earlier, that those members serving on the IDA can come with an open mind to be able to see the impacts, not just in maybe a focus area of theirs, but how it impacts all across the community, and weigh the pros and cons, and also the reality that these projects are adding to our tax base. These projects are not abating current property taxes, but phasing in additional property taxes, right? So it's not like we've shut the faucet off on their tax bill. It's a slow drip on the new taxes coming in. So I say that, I feel like I'm rambling at this point, so I'm gonna stop talking and give Legislator Koreman a turn. I will support this, but I support this as written. I don't support this codifying binary seats. And I support this more for looking holistically at a more representative at-large population of the board of the IDA.
So for me, what I wanted to mention now is I think this is a fundamental idea, a fundamental concept regarding more diversity and including more groups. And we know this as representatives, if people are telling us they're not represented and they want a seat at a table, this is an easy way to do it. I think it's a relatively easy way to do it. So whenever somebody says, we want a seat at the table, then we should try in every way possible to get them a seat at the table. And so to me, it's just as simple as that. For us to say, well, we're representing you, and we know what's best for you, and you don't know what's best for you. I think when we hear those words, we need to really think about that. When there is an easy mechanism, very easy, to have a seat at the table. So I also wanted to mention that before I was on the IDA, I had some misconceptions, but having school board on the IDA is actually a mechanism to help folks learn more about it. If we have a fear that, or an idea that they don't know how the IDA works, having them at the table will help with that. So thank you, I still am very concerned about that the chair of the legislature gets to a point within those realms. So I'll be watching, even after I'm not in the legislature anymore, if, or whatever I can do. We need to make sure those people are represented, and I hope people in the community are watching, and if there's more that can be done to codify so those members are there. I remember it took many years to get a labor representative on the board, and they had been asking for years. And when I got on the legislature, I made a point that we were going to have this discussion and we were going to do that, and it wasn't easy. So now we're talking about a school district member, and so we need to make that happen and not drag our feet. Let's do it. I know we have to deal with the state, but let's keep the movement on this.
Let me give the potential last comment to Mike Sigler, depending on your comments. And then we'll go ahead and hopefully if there's no more, okay. So I guess Veronica's going to get the last word. So go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say, as I mentioned, I don't have a strong feeling on this either way. I mean, the difference between 7 and 8 is fine. I mean, on the pro side, it takes more power away from the legislature, which I don't think is a terrible thing in this instance. Do have a couple questions, though. I mean, the resolution we're voting on is the one that's in the packet, right?
Correct.
Okay. So it really doesn't assure the school board of getting a seat. I don't want anybody to have that kind of misconception.
That's correct.
I mean, I don't really see how this changes very much. I mean, we could have had somebody from the school board apply over the last 20 years and they would have been considered and probably would have got on, actually. So, like I said, great, have somebody come apply, I suppose. What my concern here is, though, the union seat, I think, is codified. I seem to remember voting on that actually being a union seat. Am I incorrect in that, Chairman? John?
No, I think that's correct.
I would not like to see this supersede that. Like, I don't want this resolution to now knock that resolution out of the box. I mean, usually you go with whatever the new resolution is. So I like the fact that that's a codified union seat. So I don't want this superseding that.
We're gonna clarify that legislative history here in just a second. But Veronica?
I guess, three things now. I had was thinking a similar thing, and I looked up I don't know if there's been more, but the resolution that added the labor seat, and in it does say resolved, blah, 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 to have the chair of the legislature appoint and the legislature approve the appointment of 3 legislators, 1 elected municipal official, 1 representative of organized labor, 1 IAED nominated appointment, and 1 at-large member. And so, I mean, I think that resolution and this resolution are totally non-contradictory in spirit and intent, and might cause pedantic people like me to have issues down the line, but I am comfortable with moving this past committee and touching it up as needed for consistency after.
Veronica, can you provide, do you have a resolution number, or just so that we can make sure that members of this committee have a copy of that in its entirety?
Well, if I may, I should think that all that this means is that if and when we get approval from the state to have a 9-member board, we need a new resolution that determines who's going to get those seats. Right. I don't think it contradicts what we currently have.
Yeah, and you may not
That
even
makes
need
sense.
a new resolution for that either. If you have direction there, you just have more at-large members, and the same, you could or
I think
you
it would
couldn't.
be neater if we cleaned it up, but that can wait until we get
Sure,
the whole thing.
sure.
Yeah.
I guess is there any other need for further conversation as it relates to that?
I just want to say it's resolution 2020-209. I don't know how to read the ID number out of this.
That's fine.
Okay. Other comments, Veronica?
Yeah, sorry. I also wanted to say, Rich, I didn't mean to discount the great amount of work you've done for the IDA over the years. You don't see me trying to do it, and I'm excited to see you adapt to this hopefully new board composition. And finally, I wanted to say for the record that Deborah was right about, I should have just left it there. I was right about the state law that I referred to when it talks about IDA boards. It says such members may include representatives of local government, school boards, organized labor, and business. So I think that expresses a clear intention, but it is not that
It's not a directive.
Right. We have not been violating the law in any way.
If I could just respond. Thank you, Veronica. And you know what? If it goes to 9, it'll keep going. Where I do want to emphasize how wildly successful our IDA has been in helping our community. This is one of the best IDAs in New York State in terms of delivering benefit overall to the tax base, for jobs, for environmental considerations, energy efficiency, use of local labor. It's all working, and it's a really, really valuable thing. We need to be jealous of it and protect it. And as long as we're doing that, if it's 9 and it works, that's okay. But
Rich,
let's be careful.
I don't know I'm raising my hand at you, I guess, because I can just talk. I'm like, Greg. Call on me, someone call on me.
Greg, could you respond to that?
I think to your point too, think about the contributions now that we're starting to see to our Community Housing Development Fund. And those payments and the growth that we're able to see in affordable housing and other projects in not just the city, but in many parts of our community. The incredible project in Trumansburg, projects in Dryden and the city and other places are in part because of policies and mechanisms that are part of the process in which developers go through to achieve whatever sort of pilot or abatement is put in place. So with that, I do need to be mindful of the rest of our agenda. We are not the legislature where we can spend all night here. We do have a finite period of time, so I am going to go ahead and call for a vote at this time. Legislator Brooks.
Yes.
Deborah Dawson.
Yes.
Mike Sigler.
Yes.
Veronica Pillar.
Yes.
And Koreman.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. This passes unanimously out of committee, and we'll head off to the legislature and then off to the state for it to get put into the cog of Albany.
I would ask, Greg, that it's not put on the consent agenda, that it's...
We can remove this from the consent agenda so that there's discussion, and we'll put it under the IAED committee. Thank you. All right, next up, County Administrator's Report. Corsa, anything exciting?
It's been an exciting discussion, and I'm looking forward to the process that comes up. I think I'm not new to IDA challenges and their understanding of economic development need and putting everything in perspective. So I'm looking forward to working with all of you and trying to address economic development in the county. We don't have any specific report today, and looking forward to future conversations.
Great, thank you. Next, I see that we have our Commissioner of the Department of Social Services, Kit Kephart, and also Liddy Barger from the Continuum of Care. Kit, just again, we hold this space on the agenda for any sort of update as it relates to our homeless response shelter, unhoused. So the time is yours, and then Liddy will ask for a quick update from the Continuum of Care as well. So go ahead, Kit.
Sure. Hi, Greg. So we are, just to kind of give people a sense of where we're at in numbers, our Code Blue shelter, as of February 3rd, we had 25 adults sheltered there, and the average nightly number of people in the last 7 days was 27. So that's what we're seeing at the Code Blue shelter. In terms of more general shelter, we've got 111 individuals sheltered that are both Code Blue and THA that are not associated with the Code Blue shelter site. We've got 91 THA recipients, 79 adults, 12 children, and under Code Blue, again, not associated with the Code Blue site, we've got 16 adults and 4 children that are sheltered under Code Blue. And we're working, in general, we are working on many steps right now towards expanding shelter capacity and developing options for people. So I think probably county administration will at some point give updates on some of that as well, but that's kind of generally where things are at.
Thanks, Kit. I see Mike Sigler has a question or comment.
Well, Kit, I want to thank you for getting me back to me before about the numbers. I would like, I guess, the numbers really in January, and I ask this because, you know, we're debating about the shelter that we're going to build and what the sizing of that should be. It certainly seems to me that when it's unbearably cold outside, we're talking, you know, below 20 degrees, that should give us a really good number of those who really need sheltering. And I would be interested if the legislature will entertain kind of taking that number and maybe basing some of our decisions about the sizing of the shelter. We were talking 100 beds, but it certainly doesn't sound like we need something that large.
So yeah, I mean, the other piece of this, I think, Mike, is that we, and again, I don't want to speak to too much of this because I think county administration's working on some of this, but I think the other issue is really recognizing the parameters, and we may need to have OTDA weigh in on some of this. I think that the reality is that there are parameters around where we can shelter people and what populations can be sheltered with each other and away from each other. So I think the other thing we've got to really consider is what sites are going to be able to serve what populations of people. I think what we've got to really consider is if we have a site, what population are we going to serve at that site? And then what are we going to do with the populations of people that can't be served by that site? So I think you're right in terms of, you know, if we're talking about 100 beds, that might be 100 beds for single individuals, and then we might need to look at other options. Even within those single individuals, there are going to be certain populations of people that likely won't be able to be sheltered with that core population. So there will be some work to do to kind of determine how we'll manage the various sites and who can be at which.
All right, thank you. That was a good question, Mike. Any other questions or comments for Kit? All right, Kit, I just wanted to reiterate a message from our chair last night. Hopefully you and your team and staff had a chance to see Dan Klein's comments during his report as it relates to support of our shelter workers and making sure that, we recognize the good work and, the challenging, the challenges that come with doing that good work, and that we're grateful and we're supportive and, trying to make sure that we rally around all those involved in this equation, right? There's those that need our services most, and then that there are those that are providing those services. So I want to echo his comments of gratitude and support for those that are doing the heavy lift, and for many that are putting in the long hours, the late nights, the on-calls. So thank you. I know that it is a complicated problem and there's imperfect solutions, and we're doing the best. It's good to have community engagement, and we just want to make sure that we channel that productively. So again, thank you, and hopefully your team gets to watch his comments at the legislature last night.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks for pointing that out. I was away last night, so I didn't get to hear or see those, so I appreciate it, and I will check those out. I really appreciate the support from everybody.
It looks like Legislator Pillar has one comment.
Yes, Greg, you're right on me. I do have a question. What sort of feedback loops or channels are there for shelter guests or potential guests to, I guess, express concerns if they have any about their own experiences?
Sure. So there, within the shelter, there's a grievance process. There's a grievance form that they have access to. Obviously, they can speak at any time to the staff that they're, that are on. There's always a supervisor. They can always speak with that person. Most of the time, I think concerns can be resolved, in person at that moment. But certainly if there's a greater concern, they can complete that. Staff oftentimes also follow up then and document things in an incident report if there was an incident, that kind of thing. But the other thing to remember is that in many cases, people are also using the DSS site as their warming center during the day. And in many cases, people are also being served by DSS, not just the Code Blue shelter. So people oftentimes, they have contact with workers at DSS. They're very familiar, and they're in constant communication with workers as well. So any of that is possible. It oftentimes may seem like when people are presenting something to the legislature or people are feeling aggrieved, even emailing, it may seem like there's not an active dialogue going on, but I can assure you in most circumstances, there's an active communication going on. Workers are giving people feedback and communications, trying to resolve issues. I will also say that resolution doesn't always look, for any of us, right? Doesn't always look the way that we wish it would. So I know that when having just mailed a package when I was on vacation, expecting it would be here when I got home, and then it hasn't arrived and it's stuck someplace. I've been on the phone trying to resolve that circumstance. Resolution right now for me looks like having a conversation and trying to open a claim and trying to wait for more information about it. Sometimes that process takes a while, and we have to look into things, do an investigation and process with people. So sometimes people feel upset, but it's not an immediate answer or an immediate resolution. But we are working towards that all the time, and we are in communication with people for sure. And there are processes to go through to allow people to grieve. So if that helps.
It does. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Thanks, Kit. Appreciate your time. We'll let you get back to it. And Liddy, I know you. Oh, there you are again. Liddy Barger from the Continuum of Care.
Hello, good afternoon. I don't have a huge update, but I am going to say some words. So my name is Liddy Barger. I'm the Director of Housing Initiatives at Human Services Coalition. I want to talk a little bit briefly about some of the work that the COC and I am doing to prepare for the potential fallout from the recent memo freezing federal funds. So without getting into too much details, I think the sort of most salient piece of it for this group is to know that here in Tompkins County, Ithaca, New York 505 Continuum of Care, currently what is most at risk is the next 2 years of funding in the amount of $1.6 million per year. So 2024 and 2025 funding that has already been awarded by HUD to our community, but didn't make it through its full congressional, it wasn't like stamped at the very end by Congress. And there is a potential that that funding will not flow into our community. And so we're doing some advocacy around figuring out what the impact of that funding, the loss of that $1.6 million per year of funding that comes into our community from the federal government would look like. What that funding funds currently is both staff and some amount of rental costs, but not all, for many of our permanent supportive housing projects. So Magnolia House, Amici House, Corn Street, the Learning Webs, permanent supportive and transitional housing projects. It also, we were awarded new funding this year that was set to start in October that included a grant for survivors of domestic violence to have increased access to rapid rehousing, and for some of our street outreach collaborative work to improve their access to coordinated entry. So these are like real everyday things that you all are kind of used to hearing me talk about. And actually, Greg, you set me up well earlier when we were talking about both the people who stay in projects and the staff that serves those projects. The ripple effect of the loss of funding is greater than just the people who are living in those projects, and includes really like the employment of many low and moderate income workers in our community and beyond, right? So, and also for thinking about scaling and right sizing for a future emergency shelter, we want to be really careful when we're thinking about who's currently permanently housed in these projects and what that looks like in the future. So I'm happy to talk about it more. We're looking at numbers, we're doing a little bit of modeling, and then we are also connected to some of the national advocacy work that's happening, specifically National Alliance to End Homelessness, which is pretty squarely focused on those 2 years of fundings for all the continuums of care in the United States. And I can share information about that. But that's kind of one of the things that I think is the most important for this group when we're thinking about local, regional, state, national. We're all one big whole organism here. And so I just wanted to share some of that today. That's all I got. Thank you.
Well, I wish you had a better report, Liddy.
I mean, we'll see, right? It's all like, everybody's all, frozen, and we're thinking and we're learning, and we are in a state of confusion and all of that. But I will say, continuums of care, because we're set up in such a way that there's sort of like some version of me and us in every single community in the United States. We have a very specific focus on that federal funding that's coming into all of our communities, and making sure that we're able to at least maintain our effort. And we've already, it was already awarded to us. Congress already approved it. They just hadn't released it. So it's a very specific advocacy point, but one that does matter in our community.
Well, please keep us up to date on if there's any advocacy efforts or any assistance that, the committee or the full legislature can provide. Because I think as we we see housing is probably, you know, in the top of challenges that we face within our community at all levels, but especially, you know, our most vulnerable populations. So I know we're here to support and help, and so as information comes to you, if you could help get that out to us, you know, we'd greatly appreciate it. And again, you'll always have time here on the agenda, so we'll use this as a regular connection point. But does anybody quickly have questions for Liddy? All right, I appreciate it, Liddy. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon. All right, next up, our Planning and Sustainability Department. Come on down. Last night was all about musical references, so I guess tonight is about game shows.
Game shows, yeah.
Game shows, yes.
And would you like door number 1?
Yes. For many of you, is if the price is right? Yeah.
No, isn't that, let's make a deal?
Let's make a deal, yeah. All right, we have a couple of resolutions. I know members of the legislature on the committee were either emailed or provided with a hard copy of resolutions that will be added to the agenda. My apologies for not mentioning that sooner. First, update or conversation, and then we can jump right into the resolutions.
Yeah, the first one is around broadband.
Okay.
So Nick, do you want to introduce?
Sure. So let me just move it first, Nick. Yeah, so we have a resolution, contingent fund appropriation, Department of Planning and Sustainability, broadband consulting ID 13064. If I could have a mover. Moved by Ann Koreman, seconded by Veronica. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, so this resolution simply moves funds we had in the 2024 budget into this year's budget. This is to keep ECC Technologies on contract as our consultant to advise us on matters relating to broadband. Yeah, that's basically as simple as it gets.
Great. I do want to point out on this is packet page 13, line 25 should say decrease expenditures, and then it goes into contingent fund 35-8. It says increase revenue, increase expenditures. The guidance that we got from our deputy county administrator was to have that be decrease expenditures on line 25 rather than increase revenue. So does the mover and seconder find that friendly? Yeah. Any objection from members of the committee? Okay, so that now will proceed as part of the resolution. This is, as I think as several of the other ones, or one of the other ones is housekeeping year to year moving money.
Yeah, and in previous years, when we had a contract established with a vendor, we could encumber funds across budget years. That is no longer the case.
Right. All right, any questions for Nick on this one? All right, Travis Brooks. We're gonna take a vote now, sorry, I should have said that.
Yes.
Great. Deborah Dawson.
Yes.
Mike Sigler.
Yes.
Ann Koreman.
Yes.
Veronica Pillar.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. All right, so that passes 6-0. Any other comments on broadband, Nick?
Not at this time.
Okay. The next one, Megan, welcome. We have the New York State County Infrastructure Grant Program, ID 13065, if you want to sort of tee that up, and then we'll move into the resolution that was provided in the packet.
Great, yes. So last month, you may recall this new state grant program. In the interest of equity, you all directed us to go out with a request for expressions of interest. We got those back. We had a small internal review committee that looked at the applications based off of the Empire State Development ESD criteria, as well as our known county goals around housing. And one project clearly rose to the top. It was a pretty simple review process. And so this resolution is to go forward with recommending the Southworks Ithaca project be our applicant, or be our project, that the county as the applicant would apply for this money, that we are able to pass through to a developer for the actual infrastructure costs around the site. And it would support initially these first 93 housing units, with more to come in the rest of that first phase and subsequent phases of the Southworks project. I'll also note that we've got team members from the project here today. If you have any specific questions, they're happy to talk with you.
So as we move into the substance of the resolution, I'd like to ask someone for a mover for resolution to select applicant for Tompkins County's submittal to the New York State's County Infrastructure Grant Program, resolution number ID 13080. Moved by Deborah Dawson, seconded by Ann Koreman. So that is now on the table, and we'll open it up for comments or questions. Mike Sigler.
I always got to be first, apparently. My question is, were there any other applicants for this? How many there were? What was kind of the process of selection when it came to that?
Sure. So we got 5 expressions of interest, and we had created a scoring rubric based off Empire State Development's eligibility criteria, since it has to be eligible, and also their review and selection criteria. And then we added to that, and I got a sense of the committee last month that there are county goals as well, since they're interested in housing support. We're interested in affordable housing, so we asked some of those questions too. And so so we combined those as our criteria for scoring the applications.
And did this one come out like way ahead? Was it a pretty competitive kind of thing? Or?
Yeah, it was a pretty quick review meeting.
Okay.
So, yeah.
As in clearly rose to the top.
Clearly. Legislator Koreman.
Yeah, I just want to add that I'm happy that we are able to do this, and I'm happy and that our planning department can help with this. For this project and many others, we talk about infrastructures, if it has to be added, which it often does, can be a significant financial burden for the project. So anytime it can be helped in any way, so I think is a plus. And I know that there's a lot of projects that just don't come before us because looking at infrastructure is just too much of a hurdle. So thank you.
Katie and then Deborah.
Sorry.
No, please go ahead, Katie.
I just wanted to add that the hope is that the state is going to make this more of a permanent program, and there's a request at least to double the amount next year. So we're hoping with this example of a great project that'll help give the impetus to continue this infusion of money into the community.
That would be great.
Deborah Dawson.
Yeah, a question. The memo says that you can submit for up to $1 million in funding. Do you have any idea what the total amount that the state has set aside for this and how competitive it is?
So it's $50 million, and it does not include some of the downstate counties. So I think the ESD's hope is that they don't tell anybody flat no. There's a $500,000 or $1 million cap, depending on whether you're supporting housing development or not. So I think they're thinking that there are some counties that will be looking at general economic development, tourism kind of projects, and not supporting housing. So if some are asking for $500,000, some for $1 million, most communities
Maybe everybody will get something.
Get something. We're trying to move quickly because we'd like to go for the maximum. We've got those costs in this project and go for the $1 million. So, yeah.
Thank you.
I would just add that we're also fortunate here that we have private development partners who have the ability to raise the 50% match. That's not the case in some of the other Southern Tier 8 counties that I know of. They aren't able to apply for this money because they can't get the match.
So it sounds like we have a pretty good chance of being successful. Thank you.
I do want to point out one thing to my colleagues, and I know this will be hard for members of the public, but hopefully we can include the map and attachments. It is, but if we can include that as it moves forward through the process. What this does, and if you have a chance to see the map, this unlocks the potential for additional development. And I think that that's really key because many projects build their 30 units and then they're done. Or they build their 5 townhouses and they're done. What this does, was it 93 units in this first phase, right? And then there's 24 units, 32 units, 35 units, 33 units, 24 units, 4 unit, 4 unit, 4 unit, 4 unit, 4 unit. I can't do math that quick, but it's a lot of units, as you can see up there on the screen. And so I think looking at long-term, what's the greatest impact for this type of investment? One, having a private developer prepared to make that investment, but also being able as a county and as the state to invest in something that unlocks even greater development by creating connection points and access to continuing this project, for me is a real plus. And I think it's something to really note that this is not just about 93 units. This is about opening the door on so many more. And that's why I'm highly supportive of this moving forward. Any additional comments?
Who was it that put that up there? Was that you, Taylor? Who was
Oh.
Megan? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Megan. We didn't plan that. I know we have members of the Southworks team here. Just want to say hi. I don't think there's any questions. I always love to see folks in the audience. So feel free to come every first Wednesday of the month. But we'll go ahead and call for a vote if there's no additional comments or questions. Travis Brooks.
Yes.
Deborah Dawson.
Yes.
Mike Sigler.
Yes.
Ann Koreman.
Yes.
Veronica Pillar.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That passes unanimously. Good luck on the application process, and I know our county staff is supportive and available to make sure that all goes well. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next, I think, Nick, you're still in the hot seat, right?
Still here.
With a budget adjustment tourism program. This is resolution ID 13057. I'll go ahead and move that if I could have a seconder. Seconded by Legislator Pillar. And go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, so similar to the previous resolution, this moves funds that were allocated in the 2024 budget into this year's budget. Unspent grant money primarily, and a few contracts that are still open. Happy to answer questions if folks have about any of these topics. There's a memo that attempts to clarify them. That's probably more informative than the resolution itself. So.
Any questions for Nick on housekeeping type resolution? Deborah Dawson.
Just a quick question. Is this the last payment on wayfinding? Are we done with that yet?
No.
Okay. How much more?
I don't know.
Well, hopefully you don't get lost in the process, Deborah, but it's moving quick.
GPS works really well.
Sorry, wayfinding has been something that's been discussed for many, many years, and it's nice to finally see things starting to come to fruition. So appreciate everybody's efforts on that. Other questions for Nick? All right, we'll go ahead and call for a vote. Travis Brooks.
Yes.
Deborah Dawson.
Yes.
Mike Sigler.
Yes.
Ann Koreman.
Yes.
Veronica Pillar.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That passes unanimously. Next, also we have report discussion, tourism quarterly update, February 2025, ID 13075, and I'll turn it over to you, Nick.
Great, thanks. Seeing as we're getting close to time here, I'll keep it quick. Yeah, we got fourth quarter 2024 occupancy tax in, and that came in at $1,061,692, which is a slight uptick from where we were in 2023. However, our overall 2024 numbers came in slightly below what we had forecast in the budget. You can see those numbers there. We came in at just under 4.3 million, but we had budgeted about 4.44 million, so a shortfall of about 150,000. We do have reserves in place, working here in the next coming days with Finance Department on reconciling 2024 numbers, especially now that this resolution you've all thankfully just approved is gone through. That will help us clean up and close our books on 2024. STPB has held monthly meetings in November and January. The new chair for STPB this year is Doug Levine, and Kelly McCash is our vice chair. Tourism program currently has grant applications open for Tourism Advancement Grant and the Community Celebrations Grant and the Tompkins Outdoors Grant. If you know anyone who's planning an event, whether that's free or ticketed, that may or may not attract visitors, please feel free to direct them my way. I can answer questions and guide them to the appropriate grant program. We have just about $179,500 available among those 3 programs. All the applications are due Thursday, February 27. Data collection for the visitor profile study wrapped up last week, the 24th, 2 weeks ago, the 24th of January, and working with a consultant there and expecting to bring a report to this committee in April with detailed findings from that. So keep an eye out for that. Should be interesting. The Hospitality Employment Training Program operated by GIAC is currently accepting applications. If you know of somebody who might be a good candidate for that, feel free to direct them to the GIAC website to apply. And finally, another item to watch for is we are anticipating an amendment to our local law for the hotel room occupancy tax. As reported in the last HED meeting, there's a new state law regarding short-term rentals. One of the things that it clarifies is that all counties that collect hotel room occupancy tax can collect it from short-term rentals without having to amend their state enabling law. So I've been working with the county attorneys on this and expect to see some draft language in the next, in probably about 2 months that will be shared through this committee. So more to come on that. And in addition, in the report, there's tables with the allocations of funds year to date and the room tax numbers. So happy to answer questions folks have on the committee.
Questions or comments for Nick? Nick, I guess one of the questions I had, and I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, but in Q4 for rooms 10 or less, typically that's where short-term rentals will fall.
Yep.
Do we know if we saw an increase in occupancy or was it driven by occupancy or was it driven by rate?
That's a good question. I don't have the data. We have access to some information through key data that aggregates information from Airbnb and Vrbo, which is the 2 big drivers for that segment. And I can't recall off the top of my head where things were. I'm inclined to say it was occupancy, but I would have to double check.
Yeah, I guess one of the things I would be interested in sort of following along in this committee is looking at the impact of the short-term rental regulations and trying to understand, available units, occupied units, those type of things. And again, I don't know I'm not a statistician or a data person and putting it all together, but it would be interesting to sort of look at, are we seeing the impact that we project we're going to see? Because I'm sure this will be helpful and as we move into the budget process for STPB, but also, larger, is the legislation and regulation that happened in the city, is that actually making an impact, right? Because a negative potentially for STPB could also be a positive for the housing community, right? So trying to track that and wrap our arms around that would be helpful to, it might be cross party lines between you and housing, planners and,
Yeah.
He's like, no, don't cross party lines.
I'll take a step. I mean, we have tried to look at this over the years, and the data wasn't there to be able to do that analysis. Maybe with this new law and this new registration system, it might change things, but
something to keep
just
an eye
to
on.
temper expectations, it's hard to tease apart, but we are keeping an eye on that because it's important.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that's top of mind because I think anytime we enact new legislation, it's important to track the success of that legislation. Of course.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that NYSEG has set up a team to assist municipalities with this. They have set up all the element of implementing the law and also the registration process, and they are going to assist the county from beginning to the end. And it will be one of the focal point of NYSEG meeting conference later this month. So there are processes that are coming for full assistance on behalf of the county by NYSEG.
That'd be great. Yeah, thank you for reminding. In an earlier meeting, Ryan Gregoire, the legislative director for NISAC, did make a comment that there's going to be some support resources, et cetera, on NISAC's website in the next day or two. So something to keep a lookout for.
Definitely pay attention to that.
All right. All right, thanks, Nick. Appreciate it. Appreciate everybody's crispness in helping us catch up on our agenda time. We have time now for our next reporter discussion, the February Ithaca Area Economic Development Report, ID 13078. We have Kelly here with us today.
Yes.
I know Heather sends her regards.
Yes.
But we'll turn it over to you for your report and discussion.
Great. Since I stand between you and leaving, I will keep this very brief.
So you don't get stampeded.
That's right. That's right. No, thank you for having me today. Just a couple of things that I'll highlight. The IDA did recently approve a sales tax incentive for TET Medical, which is a healthcare testing R&D company that is newly occupying space up at the Cornell Business and Tech Park, which is very exciting. They are working on testing that, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Stroke testing, which is, it's the third leading cause of death, and it is highly misdiagnosed. So this is really exciting. They also have testing that they're developing for canine cancers and liver enzymes, at-home liver enzyme testing, which is pretty cool. They have already taken up occupancy in the tech park, which is great. And they are bringing some new jobs to the area as well. Going for approval at this month's meeting is a pilot benefit for Cinemapolis to make it so that they do not have to pay their property taxes. This is a bit of a convoluted situation with property ownership, but we're excited for them to be able to benefit from this.
Kelly, just to point out, not-for-profits or the reason why that this is unique is because of their status and
as a lease.
But
ownership structure.
The problem is the ownership structure.
Yes.
They would,
yes.
They don't own it. They would have to pay Asteri. Yeah.
Because they lease through the
Right.
IURA with the city,
Yeah.
they're unable to outright purchase the building. In 28 years, they may be able to, and then they will not have to pay their
I'll be good.
property taxes.
Yeah, I just
Stay
wanted
tuned.
to point out that
This
it was
channel.
it's a very unique situation.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. And construction has begun at the State Street Apartments behind the Gateway Building. And that project will contribute over $1.8 million into the Community Housing Development Fund.
Outstanding.
Yes, yes.
Sorry, go ahead, Ann.
Do you know when that payment will be?
That is, I believe, supposed to take place at closing, which has not occurred yet.
So the full payment at closing, but not sure.
I believe, but I'll confirm.
Okay,
on that.
thank you.
Yes.
Kelly, there were two things in the report that I think are of note based on our recent conversation we had 90 minutes ago about local labor. The Dean Construction Labor Monitoring Complete, the first project to be completed under the IDA's local construction labor policy, was completed this fall. There was the renovation of 401 East State Street, an apartment complex called the Dean. The policy was found to be in compliance and met 75% local labor requirement.
Yes.
So that's something to note. And then also the construction labor reporting that there's a third party that's been engaged to oversee the monitoring and implementation of the local construction labor policy, which can help probably better manage on-site waivers,
Absolutely.
all of those type of components so that we can get a good, clear picture of our local labor policy and the impact that it's making.
Yes, yes.
Any questions for Kelly as it relates to the report and the information in our packet? Quiet bunch. Where was everybody last night? Just kidding.
We talked ourselves out.
We talked ourselves out.
We were there last night, right?
That's why I like having this right after the ledge meeting. Kind of, there's nothing else. We appreciate you hanging out and hanging in there and keeping it crisp.
No problem. Thank you.
So much. Next on the agenda is committee members' reports. Anybody have anything to share for the good of the group? Okay. Seeing none, we'll stand adjourned at 4:35 p.m. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.